Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I've got some information about throwing harness style swim baits. You know, it's a bait that can be a little bit intimidating for a lot of different anglers. You know, just swim bait fishing in general. It's real easy to think, hey, you know, swim bait fishing's all about throwing giant baits, maybe fishing all day trying to get one bite. I need special tackle for it. I need special gear for it. Well, with harness style swim baits, especially something like a 6-inch call shad like this one, it is a great way to get big bites, but you know, it's also a way to get a lot of bites and to get a lot of good bites. It's not so much in the category of, hey, I'm throwing this all day for one bite. You can go out there and catch a limit of fish, catch a lot of fish if you throw it at the right time. However, you know, there are a lot of mistakes that I see people make and mistakes that I've made in the past with this bait. So to try to, you know, shorten that learning curve a little bit, today I'm going to go over to the 3 biggest mistakes that I see people making with harness style swim baits. Before I go any farther, I forgot to mention earlier, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, drop a comment below, let me know what's going on, and let's dive into this. So the first mistake that I see people make with a swim bait like this is they're throwing it in the wrong conditions. You know, one thing about throwing a swim bait is things have to be right for it. You need a couple different criteria. You got to meet a couple different criteria, in my opinion, for fish to really be on it. The first one is you need relatively clean water. You know, I've caught fish on a bait like this in stained water, for sure, absolutely, but never muddy water. I'm not going to throw this thing if I don't at least have a couple feet of visibility, preferably more. You know, fishing out west here in Arizona, California, it's easy to find situations where you got 5, 6, 7, 10 feet of visibility, and that's great. But, you know, even back east in the southeast, you know, if you've got a couple foot visibility, you're still in a good range to be throwing a harness style swim bait or a swim bait in general. You know, a bait like this, sure, the fish can feel it. They can feel it thumping, but it's really more of a visual thing than it is something that they're feeling in their lateral line, in my opinion. So, you know, clear water is the first criteria, but, you know, even more so than the water conditions, it's the weather conditions that you're given on that specific day. And it can be really tricky because if you're throwing a swim bait like this and the conditions aren't right, you're still going to get followers. You're still going to get interest because that bait has so much drawing power. If it swims by a fish, a bass, he's going to take a look. And he's just going to swim and follow behind it and not bite it. And that will drive you crazy by the end of the day because it's hard to put it down when you're getting followers and all of a sudden it's weigh-in time, you got one fish in the boat. Or you just wasted a big chunk of your day throwing this thing. So what I look for, a couple things, low light conditions. So like early in the morning, later in the afternoon and evenings, great time to throw it. Clouds, great time to throw it. But also having some wind. You know, wind is a very, very big deal. It breaks up that surface. When the fish is down below that swim bait and they're looking up and it's slick calm, they can see this thing perfectly. They can see the hook. They can see that it's not alive. When they're looking up into a rippled surface, everything's broken up into a million different fragments and the bait looks much more realistic. It's no different than throwing a jerk bait or a spinner bait. Spinner bait does not look real, but if you throw it in the right conditions, it can look real to those fish, and this is no different. So, you know, look for windy conditions, cloudy conditions, anything other than slick, flat, calm. Can you catch a bass on this when it's slick, flat, calm? Yes. Will you catch a lot more in the right conditions? Yes. And let the fish tell you, like, hey, if you're getting a lot of bites and a few followers, that's cool. Keep throwing it. If you're getting 20 followers to every bite that you get, pick up another bait. There's a better bait, I promise. And you know, try it a couple hours later. Maybe some clouds roll in. Maybe the barometric pressure drops. But do not keep forcing it when it's not happening because it's a slippery slope. And I've been down that road many times. And you'll have a very frustrating day if you try to force it. So basically, number one biggest mistake you see, trying to force it. So don't force it when the conditions aren't right. Number 2, if your swim bait's not running perfectly, stop throwing it. Like, it's real common to have to tweak your swim bait just a little bit. You know, the call shad's really, really good. Like, I mean, this is probably the most consistent steady running up and down vertical bait that I've ever thrown. And I'm not just saying that. It sounds like I'm just doing a sponsor pitch, but I'm serious. The way this thing runs out of the package and stays running straight is a really big deal. You don't want your swim bait to, as you reel it, turn over to the side and keel over to the side. That's really unnatural. And it doesn't matter what it is, and it could happen to any swim bait. Say, you might have a swim bait that's running perfectly one day. The next day you put it stored in your rod locker and it sits kinked up against another rod or something, and it bends that tail just a little bit. And you go to use it the next time and the bait's not running right, you're not gonna catch nearly as many fish on that thing. So whatever you have to do to make sure that your swim bait is running perfectly vertical and looks real, do that. And a lot of times it's a matter of changing the weighting in it, like the coal shad here. It's got 2 different nail slots to adjust the weight depending on how fast you want to fish it. Obviously, with most swim baits, the more weight you add, the easier it's going to be to keep it running straight up and down vertically. The less weight you have, the more perfectly balanced that bait has to be. So coal shad, I like to start with a 1/16 ounce nail weight in the rear nail slot, and a lot of times that's just, I'll put that in there and I'm good to go. It runs really, really well right out of the box like that. But depending on what your swim bait is, just make sure it's running straight up and down and vertical and perfect. If you have one that does happen to get kinked, you can do a couple things. My favorite thing to do is take some boiling water, grab that bait with some tongs and dip that tail in that boiling water until it straightens itself back out. My wife doesn't like it because it stinks up the kitchen when I do it, but I boil swim baits all the time. And that's the easiest way to make a swim bait that's not running right, run right. But if it's not running right, don't throw it. Cut that thing off, put another one on, because again, you're wasting your time. And all these bites are precious. You don't want to swim that thing by a 7-pounder, have them look at it and say, that thing looks wonky, and not eat it. So make sure that swim bait's running right. And lastly, the third big mistake that is really easy to make especially when you're newer to fishing swim baits and baits like this, is setting the hook too soon. I compare this to topwater fishing, where a lot of times you want to wait until that rod loads up before you set the hook. So you're reeling it along, typically a steady, like medium retrieve. Sometimes I'll burn these, but just say it's a medium retrieve, and you get that bite. Sometimes those fish will just slam it, and you just, out of reaction, you set the hook, even though that rod never loaded up, and that fish might have been literally just hitting to stun it. Or a lot of times they'll take 2 bites out of it, if that makes sense. They'll grab the tail and then grab the head. Well, if you set the hook on the tail grab, you just pulled that bait away and you're not going to get him to bite again. So reel. Okay, there's a bite. Now my rod's loaded. Now I'm setting the hook. Do not set the hook too soon. Let that rod load up, and I promise you'll land a lot more of these fish that eat your call shad, that eat your harness style swim bait. It's a fun way to catch fish. Like I said, don't let it intimidate you. I've had days where I've gone out and really struggled because I tried to force it, but other days where I've caught 25, 30 fish on a big swim bait like this in one day. Spring is a perfect time of year to throw it, but there are windows throughout the rest of the year. But anyways, give these a try. Try those couple tips, and hope you guys catch some more swim bait fish on your next trip. Thanks for watching.